Hey, can anybody hear me now? 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Can people hear me? What has happened to the audio? Inquiring minds want to know. Any new audio? Anything new on the audio front? Can you hear me now? Hello? Oh, I'm back. You can hear me now. Great. Okay, so as I was saying, let me recap once again. Let me recap the recap, as it were. Today on Recruiting for Good, we're going to be working on building out our data model. And what I mean by that is we've already discussed what our data model should look like with the architects. And in previous episodes, we've had architects on to discuss the data model and diagramming. We've had hiring managers on talking about what they're looking for in a recruiting application. We've had recruiters on to talk about what they need in a recruiting application. And today we're actually going to start putting that knowledge that we've gathered together and put it to work for us by creating our data model in our Salesforce org, which is why you see our Salesforce org here. Now, there's a couple other things that you should have access to. One of these is the Recruiting for Good show notes, and I'm going to ask my coworker Sarah to drop the link in there again at the top of the chat so that people can join it and see our show notes and things we've talked about. Last week's episode was on engineering standards, so we had a couple of engineers who are well-seasoned, very senior engineers, and they helped me talk through what are some things that we need to make sure to do to make sure that our code base is maintainable over the long term. So we talked about that, and today we're going to be building our data model. So I have over here on my other screen, I have the diagram from the building, from the show notes. If we scroll down back to early December, about a month ago, you can see that we've got our data model here. And so what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be setting up our structured our scratch org definition so that it has person accounts, and then we're going to start building out these various other objects that we have. We've got some custom objects, those are the dashed lines, and we've got some standard objects that are solid lines. And as I point that out, I realize that v2me items is actually marked as a standard item, but it is definitely a custom object. So we'll work on those in our scratch org here. And then we're also going to put in some Apex libraries that will make our life easier. These are things that generally have been developed for Apex recipes, but we're going to talk about them, pull them into our project so that we can use them as time moves on. All right, so with that said, let's first go into our code base, and I've got our project scratch definition here, and we've already enabled person accounts. Person accounts are one of those things that has to be enabled at the scratch org definition level. So I've already gone in and I've added that. I think we did that 2 or 3 episodes ago. And we also enabled the communities because we're going to use the communities, the digital experiences as we've renamed them. But we've put that in there for our org. And what I've done is I've opened up my scratch org in the browser, and this is what we get. So to get started here, I'm going to type in schema, and we're going to go to schema builder. Now, if you've not used the schema builder, it's a graphical interface that helps you visualize and model your object namespaces. And it comes up and it's got some default things going on here, showing a whole bunch of objects. You can see down here in the map, we've got a whole bunch of objects going on. I don't want to see all those, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all. And if we look back at our data model diagram here, we need the account and the contact, and then the rest of these are going to be custom objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do account, and I'll pull in contact, there we go, and they're down here. I'm going to try and drag those be a little closer together, and we're going to organize some things here. Now we got account and contact, and these are, I'm going to make it match our diagram. So we've got account and contact, and that's sort of wrapped up together in a person account. Now, by the way, if you've got questions, comments, Snyder marks, feel free to drop them in the chat. I do have it open here on a monitor over here, so I can see that Ross has said the doc link has been added to the description of our video. That's great. And that's where I found out that my audio wasn't working for whatever reason. By the way, top tip, if your audio is not working, turn off the mic and turn it back on again. So today we're going to work on creating a v2me object and v2me items. We'll do that first. And so let's go over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Elements tab, and I'm going to drag an object over here. And I'm going to say that this is called the v2me. And, oh, how do we pluralize that? v2me's? 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 v2me v2me entries, records. We'll do records. We'll call it v2me, and the record type is going to be a name with the text. And when we think about this, when we did this diagram with the architects, we mostly worried about objects but not the fields on them, and so we got to think about what we want our name to be here. And I think we're going to use the name as a title. So we'll leave this as a text field. We'll allow reports. Might as well allow activities. Available for the customer portal. We're going to check that box. Let's save. Ruh-roh. Oh, we can't enable this because we don't have a portal enabled yet. So let's, before we go too far down this rabbit hole, let's go and we're going to go back here. We'll do digital experiences, enable digital experiences. That's fine for right now. We'll use that default one. Yes. All right. Where are people tuned in from today? I know Ross is, if I remember correctly, Ross is in the Ukraine, because we had the conversation about how to pronounce Kiev. All right, so now we can create digital experience sites. Let's see if the schema now lets us do what we want. Okay, so I zoomed out a little bit. Let me drag an object over here. We're going to call this one v2me. v2me. v2me's. We'll do v2me's, that's fine. Available for customer portal. Is it? Okay, we'll just do it without it. It is lovingly cold here in the great state of Indiana. I don't know what life is like for y'all, but here it is. When I woke up this morning, it was 7 degrees. That's Fahrenheit. So I'm going to say that's cold in Celsius. We got our v2me name here. Now, for the sake of getting this all wired up and making this look like what we want, I'm going to create a link to my person account. And I'm going to do that by linking it to the account. So we'll do a new element. We're going to do do we want to do a master detail or a lookup? I'd love to hear what people think on the chat. I generally tend to lean towards lookup, but the canonical question is, do I want the data in this object to be around after the contact or the person account to which it is linked to disappears if it's deleted? So let's say we've got a person account named Bob, and if we were to say delete Bob's person account record, would we want their v2me records to still exist? And I think the answer is no. So I'm going to drag a master detail over here, and this is going to be the account. It's related to account, and we can reparent. We'll save that. Okay, so we've linked now. Now if we look here, you see this little icon, the circle with the crow's feet there. If we look back at our diagram, that is almost exactly what we required. And I wonder if that's a typo, because we've marked this one as master detail, but not the v2me. But I think v2me probably makes sense as master detail as well. What do y'all think? What do y'all think? I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do another object, and we're going to call it v2me item. v2me item. v2me items. That makes it easier. Reports, yes. Activities, and we'll save that. Okay. And then we will drag a master detail from there to related to v2me. And we'll let them be reparented as well. Okay, so we have done a pretty good job so far in our 13 minutes of overcoming an audio issue and mirroring this portion of our data model. Let's go ahead and do this application. This application one, if you notice here, is a master detail. Let me blow up this picture. There's a master detail here between job posting and application, and a master detail relationship from the person account to this application, which means that application is a junction object. Now, I generally name my junction objects as something to something. So person account to job posting. But we could also label it application and name it person to job posting. That might make sense. Let's go ahead and let's drag an object over here. And we're going to say that this is a, let's call this application. Let's do job application. Job applications. Starts with consonant, description. We'll fill that in here a little bit. I'm going to change this to an auto number. Job application number. And this is going to be, and then we'll do and one of our engineering best practices we talked about last week was making sure that our names are meaningful. And it occurs to me that app doesn't really help anything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say job app. That makes more sense. And starting number is going to be 1. I'm going to add a few more zeros here. We will allow reports and activities. Save that. Ross is telling me it's negative 13 degrees and they have lots of snow. We are having the cold but no snow, and my personal opinion is if it's going to be cold, there should be snow. And I don't mean like hazardous amounts of snow, but I do want there to be snow. Like I want to be able to go out and have a snowball fight with my kids and lose spectacularly as they overwhelm me. But back to our schema here. We've got the job application, and we're going to drag over a master detail from here, and we're going to say that this is our account, and we're going to link this to account, and we'll make that, no, we don't want to make that reparentable. We don't want to make it reparentable because why would you want to change the application, the application's account? We wouldn't want to reparent it from Bob to Emily, for instance. So we got that there. There's a job application. Now, if you look over here, we got a job posting. And so our job posting will be another object. We'll do job posting, job postings, and job posting name text. We'll leave it as text. And we'll save that there. Now, if you're new to the Salesforce ecosystem, you may not be familiar with the concept of a junction object. Junction objects are the way we in the Salesforce ecosystem do SQL joins. I'm going to simplify things. That's how we do SQL joins. Instead of having being able to have the syntax for a join, what we do is we say you can query this junction object, and you'll have access to all the fields on account and all the fields on the job posting. But our links are created on the child object. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag another field, another master detail field, onto the job application. And this one's going to say job posting. And I'm going to make this one related to job application, or job posting. There we go. And we don't want to make this reparentable. Do that. So now our junction object exists, and I can query the account, I can query the job posting, all when I make this query to the job application object. We'll see that when we get into the code side of things. But now if we look at our data model, we also have this one-to-one relationship between a V2Me and an application. So let's go ahead and create that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a lookup. Lookups are one-to-one. We'll drag that over here, and we're going to say V2Me. And we're going to relate this to scrolling, V2Me. There we go. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't give us this lovely link in the way that we have it in our diagram, but it is there. This is a blue line. That blue line is a lookup relationship, and you'll notice that while there can be multiple job applications on this side, there was only one V2Me over here, which means that for every V2Me record we have, there can be multiple job applications, but each job application is only related to one V2Me. That's the joy of a lookup relationship, and we want to keep that as it is. Now we also, let me zoom out a little bit there, and then we've got our V2Mom that we need to create, and some obstacles, methods, and measure objects. So let's go ahead and create those. Drag this object over here. This is going to be our V2Mom. And we'll do reports and activities. We'll leave this as a, do we want to leave this as a name? Let's see. Yeah, we'll leave it as a text field for right now. The joy about this is we can always go back and change this until we have records. And since we're doing scratch org development, if we have records and we want to change it, we can just create a new scratch org and not move the data. So our V2Mom is going to be related to a job posting, and each job posting is going to have one V2Mom. And there is only one V2Mom per job posting. This is a one-to-one relationship. So that's going to be a lookup. And we have to decide who's going to be the child of that. I want to say that job posting is going to have a V2Mom. So I'm going to drag it here. We'll do V2Mom. And we're going to relate this to our scrolling, V2Mom. There we go. So each job posting can only have one V2Mom, which is what we want. Now, theoretically, the lookup relationship would allow us to have multiple job postings tied to the same V2Mom, which is what we want, because if we think about it, we're going to create a V2Mom that describes the position, what it means to be excellent in this position, and then it turns out we may hire 3 or 4 people for that position, that persona, or the role. And so the job posting represents the process and applications tied to the process of hiring for one of those headcounts. And so we might come back and say, I've got a V2Mom for a senior engineer. I'm going to put in all the work for defining what that looks like, what it looks like to be excellent for that. And I'm going to reuse that 3 times over the upcoming fiscal year as I create 3 different job postings for the same role. So that's what that allows us to do here, that split. And our v2mom has some associated child records, obstacle, method, and measure, but it also has known fields for vision and values. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to create a vision and values. And the vision and values is going to be a, let's do a long text area for, no, here, if we do a rich text area, we can't report on it or query it. So that might not be what we want. We might have to come up with some other way of doing that. But I'm going to do a long text area, and I'm going to put this one in here. This is going to be the vision, if I can spell vision right. And we're going to make this 7 lines visible. Why 7? I find that as I write, I want to be able to put line returns and make it so that I have gaps between my paragraphs. And so having 7 there gives me the ability to see, hopefully, a paragraph and the gap between it and the next one or the previous one. So that's my go-to. 7 is my go-to. And then we also need values. And our values here, obstacle, method, and measure. Our values is going to be, I think we decided it was going to be a bullet list or a tag list. So let's do if we really wanted to get under the skin of some of famous admins, we could do a multi-select pick list. But I think what we'll do is we will do it as a text area. We can do something like comma delimited or something like that. So the field label will be values, and we'll do that. We're going to make this required. That's a good call. We're also going to look at this one and say that this one is required because we need a vision. Oh, we cannot make that required here. Okay. Might have to rethink that one. All right, so over here, we need to create our obstacles, methods, and measures. So what we'll do is we'll drag one over these over here. As we say, obstacle, obstacles. That, am I spelling that right? Obstacle. Yes. Okay. The things that are hard. Obstacles. Do we want to have a name for it? Yes. We're going to do that. We're going to report on it. We're going to do activities. Save that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a... Did we do that as master detail? You don't have a listing for that. So let's think about this. Should an obstacle exist absent its v2mom? Yes, you might want to reuse the same obstacle. And so a v2mom has many obstacles, which means that our obstacle can only have we may need a junction object here. If we want to be able to reuse obstacles and link them to multiple v2moms, we're going to have to do a many-to-many relationship, which would definitely be a junction object. So let's pause on that one for just a second. And we're going to drag another object over here, which is I've got obstacle, and we've got method and measure. So what we'll do is method, methods, name, we're going to reports, activities, save that. And then off of method, we also need to have another object that is measures. Measures. Reporting, activities, save. saving. In theory. There we go. Okay. So our measure is tied to one particular method. And so let us do a, if the method goes away, we only want the method. If the method goes away, we want the measure to go away as well. So we'll say method here. This is going to be related to method. Okay, now, here's where things can get interesting. We could create a junction object here and theoretically link obstacle and method to the v2mom for it and make it polymorphic. So let's look at what that would look like. I'm going to drag this here. We're going to do v2mom component. v2mom components, like that. Reports, activities, save that there. Let's just make this a little bit easier to read. And then we'll drag a master detail here, and we'll do, this is going to be our v2mom related to v2mom. Now, I wish I could drag multiple master detail record relationships here, but I can't. That's not allowed on the Salesforce platform. So what I can do is I can create a type method. So let's do a pick list. Put it on there, and we'll do type. And the values are going to be obstacle, and also method. And then I'm going to create lookup relationship to the obstacle. And now because these are lookup, they can be null or not filled in. And so by putting the obstacle there, yep, and by putting in another another lookup relationship here, we can do method. This is going to be tied to method. Method. Okay, so this looks crazy. I'm just going to make this a little, drag this back over here. Okay, so we've got a junction object, kind of. It's not really a junction object because there's only one master detail relationship here, but it's polymorphic, and so we can go from obstacle to method and see which one of those it's going to be. And if it's a method, we also have access to the measure. And so when we do a query for a job posting, we can get its v2mom, and its v2mom components, its method, measures, and obstacles all in one query, which looks crazy. But I promise it's not as crazy as it looks. Okay? So that's our basic data model. Now we only have certain fields filled out here, but that's okay. Right? We're going to be building on adding fields as we go. We've only gone in here and put in certain fields that we know we're going to need right now. And I'm a big fan of just-in-time schema management. So I'm not going to go in there and put in more fields until I've determined what they need to be. When I determine what they are, I'm going to go in and put them in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the schema builder, and we're going to go look at our second topic of the day. To do that, I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to do github.com/ let's go with code fryer here. That's my personal GitHub repositories. And we're going to look at can the user and safely. Now this is a library that I wrote that we can use to do FLS and CRUD checks, etc. And I want to be able to use this in our recruiting for good. I think it's best practice to have this kind of library in place, and it's the one I'm familiar with because I'm biased, I wrote it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this in our class, or in our code base. Now if you go in here, you'll see that these are they're only so there's two in here, safely and can the user. I want to put both of these in here. We've also got the tests to put in. Now I could do this in a number of different ways, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do some command line magic because I happen to have these checked out here. And so if I do a CP, a copy, and I do out of the recruiting for good, and I go into can the user, and we'll do force app default main default, there we go, classes. I've got can the user and safely, but it occurs to me I may not be up to date on those, so let's pause that for just a second. We'll do boop boop can the user get pull. Already up to date. Okay, great. Go back to this one, and I'm gonna pull everything into force app main default classes. Okay, now if we look over here, you can see I've got force app main classes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder just to keep track of things. I'm going to do shared code, and then underneath this I'm going to do new folder can the user, and I'm going to drag all of these into my can the user folder. Now there's a lot of reasons to do that. My reason of doing it is so that I can see immediately that this is a bit of code that isn't custom written for this org. This org has its own custom code. This project has its own custom code, but these are from a shared code thing. I expect these to come from somewhere else, and putting them in a library there. Now I also need those tests. Now I like to put my tests outside of force app, inside force main default, but outside these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to default, create a new folder, tests. We'll do an underscore undercase, and I want to do test. Come on, let me rename this. Okay, and so underneath here I'll do shared code, and in there I'll put in new folder. I'll do can the user, and because I have this checked out, I can do CP can the user force app tests to force app main default tests shared code can the user, put them there. Now if we look here, we've got our safety tests. Now we need to push this to our org, so we'll push that to the default namespace, to our default org. Now I could have installed this with the command line, just installing a package, but I want to have these available to me here, and I want to put them in folders so that makes sense to me. So I put those there. Now, can the user is great, but I also want super stub. So let me grab super stub. This is our mocking and stubbing library. Super stub. And it says it's failing. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I think I have it checked out as well. Let's go back and see super stub, get pull. Okay. So now I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to create a new folder in classes, shared code. I'm going to do new folder. This is going to be super stub. And I'm also going to come into tests, and I'm going to do shared code New folder, super stub, and we'll do the exact same thing here. cp super stub force app main default classes asterisk to force app main shared main default shared classes shared code, and then it'll be super stub, and then we'll do the same thing, but this will be, instead of classes, it'll be tests. Is it super good? Now we're going to change this to be tests. Okay, so if I look over here, I have can the user, I have super stub, I have those there. If I go to tests in super stub, I have nothing. Okay, that's because my CP failed. So CP super stub force app main default tests. That's interesting. And let's go look and see what I did. Super stub force app main default. Did I put them all in one place? Oh, Poorman. Oh, wait. There's no unit test for super stub. It's only available in a stub context in a unit test. So, for instance, all of these are marked at is test. Silly me. We do not need a super stub folder for this. Delete that. Move it to trash. Okay. So we got that, we've got that. Let's put our metadata trigger handler in place as well. So I'm going to do shared code. I'm going to put in new folder, metadata trigger handler. And we'll put in, there are tests for that one. So I'll do new folder, metadata trigger handler. Now, let's see where that one is. Let's see if I remember. CD, come on, metadata trigger, metadata driven trigger handler. Okay, and let's look at this. We'll do get pull, get status, anything to push. Nope, good. Okay, so we've got that there. Now let's go ahead and pull CP metadata. Oh, I'm not in the right folder. Where is my... I had switched apps. CD. We'll do recruiting. Recruiting for good. And now we'll do CP metadata driven trigger handler force app main default classes asterisk to force app main default what do I call that, shared code classes shared code metadata trigger handler okay, it appears I put all those in one folder. So we're going to do cp-r, and the -r means recursive. So we'll pull those in, and then I'll sort the files. Does anybody else do this sort of like sorting in files and making it around so you can follow along with what's going on easier? So here's our metadata-driven trigger handler. And I've got my test classes, and I've got my test helpers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and this down to metadata-driven trigger handlers. Boom. Okay. Now I'm going to push. Uh-oh. Metadata trigger service. Looks like we might be missing a file or two. Metadata driven trigger handler, trigger service. Get metadata triggers from metadata trigger service. Get metadata triggers is right there. Oh, we don't have the... We need the metadata. That's a good call. So under objects, I think it's under objects. Let's look at our terminal here. And go to the other one. Do I want CD metadata driven trigger handler? Forgot that there's custom metadata types involved in that one. So let's go to force app main default, and we'll look here. We've got custom metadata, and I'm going to do move this one to, and I'm going to do -R because I believe there's custom metadata, and we're going to drop that in recruiting. Source recruiting for good, force app main default, like that. So now over here we should see we should see custom meta. Oh, it moved the file, the contents, but not the directory. So let's do a new folder, custom metadata, and then with these files in custom metadata. Move. Right, now we should be able to push. Pushing. While that's pushing, I'm going to get some water. All right. Trigger handler test classes. So go to test shared code. Metadata test classes. We're looking at the test class. Variable does not exist. Sample handler. What line is this? Is line 9? Well, let's do this. We're just going to open that directory in Finder, and we're going to see what can be seen. Metadata driven trigger handler. Let's sort by name. M default classes. Sample handler is right there. So in our classes metadata trigger handler, we've got sample handler. It's there. We're still getting metadata does not exist. Except we've got the metadata driven trigger account. Oh, these are the records. I always get confused when working with custom metadata records because I don't use them very often. So let's go with this. Yeah, I need those two objects. So we're going to copy that folder, create a new tab. We'll go to source, and we'll do recruiting for good. Recruiting for good. Here we go. Okay. Delete that. Now we should be able to push. Testing. 1, 2. Let's see if this goes. Yay! Okay, so we've pushed all of our sample code there. Now, I think that's all the shared code I want to pull in. We've got those in a nice, neat setup there. And hey, True, too. And hey, Amir. Good to see you all. I do want to go into custom metadata and create a folder here. And we'll do a new folder, and this is going to be shared code here, and then underneath this I'm going to put a new folder. I'm going to put in custom, we'll do metadata trigger handler. Trigger handler. And I'm going to make all of these go into that folder. Boom. And now I should still be able to push. Overwrite conflicts. That shouldn't make a difference. And there we go. So I've got everything set up here in a nice organized fashion. And I think we're doing great. We've got 12 minutes left, which is admittedly a few more minutes than I thought we'd have. But if anybody has questions, comments, or snide remarks, this is a great time to ask them in the chat there, because we've reached the end of what I was hoping to get accomplished today. And I think we're ready to actually start developing things for our Recruiting for Good application in the upcoming weeks. So let me do this. Is there any questions from the chat? Feel free to ask. I'll wait just a second for that. And then what I'm going to do here is we've got a bunch of changes I'm going to commit. So, and we're also going to pull. We're going to pull the schema we just created down. So now if we look in here, we've got objects and what happened to the rest of our objects? Here we should have a whole bunch of objects. Where are my objects? So maybe we need to refresh this. Refresh, explore. Okay, that's going to be a problem. Let's see where. And my mouse has stopped moving. Okay. There we go. That was weird. Custom metadata, we've got that there. Why don't we have pull and override conflicts? Let's try that. No results found. We're in the Recruiting for Good. SFDX force org list. Come on. Recruiting for Good, TN7. All right. So what is my username over here? Did this get pushed to the wrong org or built in the wrong org? TN7. So I should be able to pull those objects. I wonder. No, it's just those two. This is alarming. Let's check these out. Do I have my V2? I've got those objects there. Why are they not pulling? It says nothing found. SFDX, force, source, pull. Hey, Mon. Wrong folder. Well, that's probably going to be a longer term fix than what I have right now. So let me do this. Let me move, let's try this, objects, CD, force, default, move objects to old, SFDX, force, source, pull, F. Path. Pull. Oh, I have to be. Why does it have to be? In my VS Code, the red line which tells about error is not showing. Mon, I'm not sure what you are talking about. Emit, am I sounding loud enough for you? Let's try pulling this way. Hold, the path argument must be of type string. Huh. That's interesting. Refresh S-object definitions. Let's try that. Why are we not pulling our objects? Let's see if the SFDX folder knows about them. And our schema. Nope, nothing there. S-objects, here we go. Do we have V2 mom ones? Lots of objects. I've got V2 mom objects there, but we are not pulling the metadata for them. That's weird. That's really weird. And I can't pull it all right now. So let me just do your folder, objects, pull. The path argument must be of type string. So at this point I'm going to restart Visual Studio Code. Let it redo its thing here. Gotta wait for the plugins to initialize, and then we'll try this one last time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in today. I'm on, in my VS Code, the red line which tells about error is not showing. Please help me. I'm not entirely certain what that means. If you're referring to like you've got a squiggly underneath the line that is, underneath a line of code that is an error message, like I've got this creatable here showing it as an unknown word in blue. That is probably due to PMD. You probably need to install the PMD extension and set up PMD with Java. It could be a number of things, so without seeing exactly what you're looking at, I'm not entirely certain. But now that we've got this all set up here, let's pull. The path argument must be of type string. Why are we not typing? SFDX force source pull. we can try force over right there. That's really weird. I'm not entirely certain what's on with that. So I'm gonna have to keep investigating that one. Let's do this. Let me keep investigating this. I'll get this up in GitHub though, here in the next few hours, hopefully, if I can figure out why it's not pulling our code down. But thank you all for tuning in today for Recruiting for Good. I hope to see you all next Wednesday, and thanks again. Talk to you later.